What is going on YouTube, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Dan with Valkyrie Protection Agency, and I am joined today by Josh Thompson. Josh, you want to introduce yourself?
Certainly. Josh Thompson. I'm Valkyrie Academy's Master Instructor, certified instructor under AZDPS, the NRA, Axon as a taser instructor, as well as a couple other institutions. Got a background in firearms industry, firearms sales, training and teaching people how to shoot guns, and I've been a private security guard for several years now.
All right. So YouTube, today we are kind of revisiting some of the footage that we watched yesterday during yesterday's live stream. If you happen to catch that, you will know we were having audio issues. I'm hoping to not have the same issues today. I think I figured out what the audio issues were, and they seem to have been resolved. So if you guys are having difficulty hearing us, or if there's any background noise other than that bottle being knocked over, please leave that in the comments so that I can try to figure out what's exactly causing those issues. So today we're going to start with the Houston police officer one, because we're going to be on the stream a little bit less time today than we were yesterday. And I think this one had some really good points that we're going to both be able to talk on. So let's just start by observing some of this footage, yeah?
And for the record, I have not seen this footage yet.
Yep. I obviously have seen it, so cool. And again, just that general disclaimer to anybody who is maybe jumping into the stream, there is going to be some cussing and some blood and some gunshots and some violence. And if that's something you don't want to see, go ahead and find yourself something else to do right now. So I talked about it yesterday. I'm going to talk about it again today. This first part of the video has no audio. It's from a property camera. The audio doesn't pick up until the police officer's body camera is activated. And that's going to be our bad guy hanging out by the truck. We're seeing a undercover cop coming into frame right now. Cut. All right, and that audio came in pretty terrifying right there at the end. So, so I guess initial thoughts. What are you thinking so far, Josh?
Horrible situation to be in as that undercover officer. When you see somebody running at you in a parking lot like that, kind of depending on the person, your first thought might not be, "Oh, hey, this dude's about to try and shoot me," because I think that cop was in that situation. I don't think he realized that was a deadly threat until the dude produced the pistol and was actually shooting him. It looked like our officer was trying to get his gun out from inside the car, and it looked like he was maybe having a seatbelt hang up there, like he was struggling to get his firearm unholstered from underneath that seatbelt. What do you think?
So that's actually something I covered yesterday with the stream, and that's exactly what I think happened there. And we're gonna go back through and watch it a little slower just to kind of break down a couple of details. Yeah. But I agree. I think he got hung up on that seatbelt. And I mentioned yesterday too that I would rather pay a seatbelt ticket than be stuck in my car in a gunfight. And I can't tell from this angle if he's fighting for his gun or trying to get that seatbelt out. But there's like once or twice that he like lunges out of the car and gets like pulled back in, and I'm pretty sure it's that seatbelt.
Yeah.
Did you notice how long that guy just stood there, just pumping rounds to that window?
Yes. Yeah. Our aggressor there didn't look like he was being very particular about his shot placement. He was kind of just shooting at the cop in the car, which is very lucky for that officer, because if he had been a little bit more judicious about shot placement, that officer would have lost the fight.
Absolutely.
But luckily that's not what happened, and because that aggressor, it looked like he was concerned and looking back and forth to see what was going on in the street, looking to see if there was any backup coming. And because he was distracted, that officer was able to make it out of the car and get his weapon out and return fire.
Absolutely. One thing too, you mentioned a second ago that you don't think that he necessarily assumed a deadly threat right away.
Mm.
And I also agree because if he had assumed a deadly threat, he probably would have had a different reaction. But we're gonna find out here in a little bit that this officer, has a lot of friends nearby, and they're familiar with a lookout nearby too. So I think that maybe they were looking for this guy and maybe just didn't know where he was at.
Yeah,
That being said, I don't think that's a failure on the officer by any means. But I do want to ask you, Josh. You used to do vehicle patrols with us, right?
correct.
Can you imagine yourself in this situation? Pulling into a back lot somewhere, doing a loop around the parking lot, trying to find a spot to U-turn, and then some guy just runs out at you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No, there's been numerous properties that, especially as a security patrol officer, that you frequent throughout the night. You visit that property 3, 4 times every night that you work on shift, and your first thought is, hey, let's make sure that I don't hit any homeless people who happen to walk out in front of me. Let's make sure I'm checking for any signs. I'm looking for things that aren't supposed to be there. So in my background, yes, I'm concerned about deadly threats, but there's a whole bunch of more likely things that I need to be concerned about that take precedence. So I can very easily imagine myself in the shoes of the driver, the officer, pulling into this parking lot, and he's looking for somebody, but just because you see movement in the back of an alley doesn't mean it's not somebody who is under the suffering from the influences of narcotics, or who's just mentally ill, or
Mm-hmm.
was just dumpster diving and thinks they're about to be caught, so now they're running away. Like there's a whole bunch of possible reasons for somebody to be running around in a back alley that don't justify lethal force.
Absolutely. Um, so for that fact, and I just saw a viewer jump in. Thank you for joining us. And I do want to just take a second too. And a big part of why I wanted to do these live streams and why Josh was wanting to jump in and talk with me today is um, there's a YouTuber that you guys are probably familiar with, Donut Operator, does fantastic body camera breakdowns on police videos. One of the things that I noticed though, and this isn't his fault, but he does things from a police officer's perspective, which makes sense. He's a cop, he was a cop at some point. Um, but there's not a whole lot of social media looking at from a security guard's perspective, and from a training standard point. I think that that mindset and the reviewing things from that it's a different perspective, and I don't see a lot of that on social media. So if you're wondering why we're doing this type of a breakdown from a security guard point of view, it's because it's relevant, and it just doesn't exist out there. If it does, it's a very small number of people that are doing it. So let's go ahead and continue with this video. I'm going to back this up just a little bit so Josh can see this one more time and anybody watching can see it one more time. I'm going to start right as the undercover car is coming into the parking lot. And again, our bad guy is right down here by the side of this truck. And anybody watching, the volume scare, when the officer's body camera comes on, it's going to be loud. So just be ready for that.
Yeah, he probably wouldn't even have seen the firearm until he raised his arm there.
Yeah. And you see him get sucked back in right there.
Yeah,
I think it was a seatbelt.
yeah.
Officer drops his firearm right there.
Guys, I got shot.
Okay, now we're looking at it from his perspective, from his body camera.
Okay.
So we saw right there at the end, our suspect did get back up and continue running, but that officer definitely hit him at least once to put him under the ground. The one thing I do want to point out here is Sergeant Vale or Valet, or I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. He ends up having like the craziest reaction to being shot that I've ever seen. So I mean, typically, in your experience, whether that's seeing footage or being a part of something, what do you typically expect someone to do after they've been shot?
Um, Certainly struggle to fight back the urge to panic. Um, I'd like to think that if I was ever in that specific situation, my first responses would be to notify EMS and start trying to plug my bullet wounds.
Right. So stopping the bleed and all that, and
Yeah.
obviously that's what we teach. So that's kind of the first thing on our minds. Um, I often see a lot of people start screaming and panicking and have no idea what to do.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's not to say that law enforcement doesn't get training on this, but even departments that do train on stop the bleed, oftentimes it's not trained enough to the point where it's just second nature or muscle memory, right? In this case, sergeant is what I'm going to say for now. Our sergeant is unable to provide self aid, and you'll see why here in a second. But he also has friends nearby, which is very helpful. So let's.
Guys, I got shot. Guys, I got shot. Come over here. I got shot. Pull me a tourniquet. Pull me a tourniquet. Tourniquet me up. He ran that way south. He ran that way south. Tourniquet me up. Hey, tourniquet me up. Tourniquet me. Davis. Davis, tourniquet me. Where'd you get hit? Both arms and legs. Get my legs. Tourniquet me.
Was it him?
Yes, tourniquet me. Hey,
Go back to
tourniquet
the
me.
Diamond,
Guys.
Diamond Hotel.
Guys, tourniquet me.
Black hoodie, tan
Let's go.
pants, Hispanic male.
Tourniquet both my legs.
I dodged.
Get up high. Get up high.
All right, let's pause it there just for a second. Obviously, Josh and I have both been through TCCC classes and more times than I'm willing to count, if I'm being honest. But in that situation, I don't know that I would have been able to provide self aid either. You know, both arms and legs. He was unable to retain his firearm. Like there's so many things there indicating that he's losing those fine motor skills. You know. Something I thought was interesting, though, and I'm curious about your thoughts on this. He managed to be super cool, calm, and collected, and was like, "Hey, I need a tourniquet, both legs." And then the officer was putting the tourniquet on. He's like, "Hey, put it higher, high and tight, right?" Like he's instructing these guys in the moment. Hey, I'm dying, but this is how to stop me from dying, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
His communication was excellent.
Okay, let's keep going because I think this sergeant continues to do a fantastic job, and I think you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. So, here we go.
Tourniquet my right arm. My right arm. My right arm.
I got you, Sarge.
All right, I shot him. He ran southbound. He was wearing a black hoodie.
Hey, get on the radio and listen.
Black hoodie.
Okay.
And gray khaki pants. Okay.
Black hoodie, gray khaki pants, and he's been shot.
He's been shot.
He's been shot.
All right, YouTube. So, for those who are watching, this is one of the amazing benefits of doing management work for a company, owning a company, running a company, anything like that, is that phone calls come, and when they come, it's time to answer those phone calls sometimes. So, while Josh is out of the room, we're going to take a moment and just kind of discuss what's going on in this video real quick. I don't have background on what the bad guy in the alleyway was doing, or why these officers were looking for them or looking for somebody else in the area and happened to cross these guys by bad fortune. I'm not really sure. But the suspect does get caught, which is a good thing in my opinion. The fact that officers lose their lives in the line of duty is sad. You know, at the end of the day, police officers, security guards, military, law enforcement, all across the board, you know, they're putting their lives on the line to protect the innocent and to try to provide us a community to live in where we can be productive members of society. And some people are less productive than others, as we've seen here. So this does, in my opinion, apply to security guards. And I'll ask Josh, coming right back in right now, the application to security guard for stuff like this. And it is, for this video, we're looking at training and the clarity at which these officers have received that training and have practiced on those principles. Specifically, the sergeant who's been injured has been through other situations clearly, or at least enough training to where when this became real for him, he knew what to do and he knew how to handle that situation, even though he was incapacitated. So, Josh, I gave him a little bit of filler while you stepped out for your phone call. So, what did you notice that last scene? I know it got interrupted. Did you catch right at the end there? He was giving a description of the suspect. He was giving a description of whether or not he had shot the suspect, and then also identifying wounds on himself that had not been treated yet.
Yes, I caught all that. So first and foremost, letting his buddies know, hey, I'm hurt and where I'm hurt, and hey, you've missed a very important, wound or two. Please address that so that I make it through the next few minutes. But on top of that, he's going above and beyond, in my opinion, by also making sure they know what the bad guy looks like and where he went, and that he has exchanged fire with that guy and probably hit him more than once. So yeah, his communication was excellent. One side note that I've noticed is I'm wondering to myself while watching that video after he starts receiving aid, does each of these officers only have one single tourniquet? As it looks like every person who's running up is donating a tourniquet now. So I sure hope nobody else receives hits from our bad guy, as if this continues to be a gunfight, because do they have additional medical items to plug up any additional wounds that are received by the good guys in this one?
That's a good point, and I didn't mention that yesterday because I totally missed it. You're right; they absolutely are donating their tourniquets. And as a general rule of thumb, you want to carry as many tourniquets as you have limbs, at least, or if you don't have that many on your person, like have access to those, right? So if you have like one or two on you, have like another one or two of them like in your vehicle, things like that. But there are situations too where bleeds are so bad that you need more than one tourniquet for one wound. A femoral bleed may continue to bleed after one tourniquet's been applied, and it's not impossible to need two tourniquets to stop one bullet hole from bleeding. So, cool. Last thing before we continue watching the last clip from the sergeant's perspective, he's looking up at the air. The first officer that got to him ran right past him and continued after the suspect. And I agree, and I understand that if you need a tourniquet now, you need it now. You don't need it later. You need it now. But I think that he did the right thing, continuing to look for that suspect, right? And yesterday I talked about the example from when we run TCCC with our partner company, which I don't know if I have their permission to talk about them online, so I'm not going to right now. But when we do that class with them, they have the that South American man that had the machete attack on the neck. Mm-hmm. Remember that? And the question that gets posed in class is, what do you do first, right? Because there's not a whole lot of bleeding, but he's sitting there holding his head up because he can't hold his own head up anymore. There's not a whole lot of bleeding. He's alert and conscious. He's breathing just fine. Like all the major immediate hey, I need to stop this or this person's gonna die didn't exist. So we asked the class, okay, what do we do first? And what's the first concern? And which would be,
hey, where's the dude with the machete?
Where's the dude with the machete?
Right. So we have a victim of some kind of violent assault. If it's a gun, it's a gun. If it's a machete, it's a machete, right? But if we don't know where the bad guy is, the first actions as a responder that we should take may not be to immediately provide aid. It may be to go find the dude who caused the violent assault. Mm-hmm. So as that first officer arrived on scene, he needs to be concerned about his own safety so that he does not also receive a gunshot wound. But he's also, because he's the very next guy there, has the best chance to spot and continue to chase after the perpetrator.
This is true. All right, let's continue this, and then I've got one more thing I want to show you before we wrap up for the day.
Southbound.
Southbound through this alley. There was a female with him.
Get up high.
South Northwest Patrol.
Hi guys, how's my bleeding?
You're good, you're good.
Northwest Maine.
Go get him! Go get him! I got you. You're good, Sarge.
Hey, Forrest Girl, what side? What side?
Right over here, right over here.
Hold the air, get him detained. Hold the air.
Yeah, one use the sword.
Hey, we're going back. I'm going back, Sarge. You good?
That's what I'm doing. That's why I needed you to roll.
Hey, wait, hey, where's he bleeding at? Where's he bleeding at?
Right here, right here,
Am I bleeding
right
on
here. Huh?
Am I bleeding on? No, you. Hey, Sarge, I'm taking this off.
Leg this way.
You need water? Hey.
All right, so last couple points here. The rest of this is a lot of administrative action. There's a couple more angles of like the officers actually detaining the suspect and things like that, which we can watch if you want to. But I know we're a little short on time today, so the couple things I do want to point out along the way. The tourniquet was improperly staged. It looks like everything worked out just fine, but we're gonna cover that in a full length, not a full length, but probably like a YouTube short or something like that. But if you're curious about how to properly stage your tourniquet, feel free to check out our channel. We'll have a video on that. If not, there's plenty of videos on YouTube about properly staging it. Although I do have some really cool tips about how to stage that are not like, not that they're not public knowledge, it's the wrong word for that, but they're not commonly known tips. So hopefully you find some value in that. I also noticed that after the vest came off, didn't look like there were any sucking chest wounds or anything like that. So it looks like the body armor did what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good example of why body armor is important for security and law enforcement across the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very well may have saved his life.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'm going to get this next video queued up if you want to wrap up your final thoughts on this one.
Final thoughts. Yeah, the improper staging of the tourniquet there was something I also noticed, and it's something that I see all the time on not just untrained individuals, but also on industry professionals. It seems like there's a lot of people who are not setting themselves up for success with how they stage their tourniquets. I also didn't see any checking underneath where the plate carrier was, either on the back or on the front. Maybe they did it off camera and I just couldn't tell. But
the officer that ran right when you were taking your phone call, the officer that ran up that was applying that tourniquet to the right hand, I did watch his hand shoot into the plate carrier, and he came out and he looked at his hand. He was doing a blood sweep. I didn't mention it though. It's a good catch. I don't know that they checked everywhere, but at least that guy did get one good hand in there and checked like that kind of like pec area. So this next video, I don't actually know where it takes place. It's Morris officers, so wherever Morris County is, or Morris City of Morris, or something along those lines. So that last video was an example of good training with good law enforcement officers working well together as a team. This is going to be the opposite of that. There's a death that occurs in this video that was extremely preventable. And again, there's going to be some language and some violence. So if you don't want to watch that, then find something else to do. But we're going to jump right into it right now.
If I'm not mistaken, it's this building. 1863? Okay. You go non-lethal. I miss. Miss, drop the knife. Drop the knife. Stop coming towards me. Stop coming towards me. Stop where you are, miss. Stop where you are. Drop the knife. Drop the knife. Drop the knife, miss. Casey, taser. Stop it. Stop it, you're gonna get shot.
Stop moving! Stop moving!
Stop coming towards me! Stop where you are, miss! Stop where you are! Drop
the knife down.
Stop it! Stop it! You're gonna get shot!
Shots fired, shots fired.
All right, so we watched a couple of things happen there. I think the biggest two takeaways that I want to mention before we start like delving into like tactics and training and stuff. I'm pretty sure that the male officer in that situation was an experienced officer, and I think the female was either a new officer, probably still in her FTO phase, or maybe she's just out on the street. She's not normally like a street cop. Maybe she's a behind the desk kind of cop, an investigator or something. I don't know, but there are a couple of pretty egregious mistakes that were made during this, and we covered this again in yesterday's stream. So if you've already seen this, I apologize for the recap, but have a fresh perspective. And I believe this was your first time seeing this footage as well, right?
Yes, I have not seen this footage before.
What do you think so far?
I think we share a similar viewpoint.
Okay. Josh, you want to give everyone a little bit about the 21-foot rule? I talked about it yesterday, but in your own words.
Certainly. So there's this thing in the industry, both in the self-defense world and in law enforcement, called the 21-foot rule. It's basically the understanding that if there is an assailant with some kind of melee implement, be it a knife or a club or a hammer or whatever it is, right? If they're able-bodied, they can reach you and make contact with you with that tool before you can stop them with a firearm. Not before you can draw, not before you can shoot, but before you can stop them with that tool if you just sit still.
Before you can stop the threat.
Correct.
I know it's hard to judge distance on body camera, kind of fisheye everything, especially like the Axon cameras make distance really hard to tell sometimes. But you know, the parking spaces give us a good idea of about how far away they were.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of occasions where the primary officer was a parking space and a half wide, not long, away from our assailant.
So well within 21 feet.
I would argue that he was way too close for dealing with a knife. The point I made yesterday was that he was yelling at her to drop the knife. You can yell at somebody from across the parking lot. You don't need to be right next to them to yell at them to drop a knife. So
did they go into this call knowing there was a knife, or did they?
I don't know.
Did he start yelling upon sighting the knife?
So when they got to like the grassy area, I could hear his gun come out, and then he started giving commands. So I think, you know, whether or not they knew there was a knife involved when they got there, I don't think he drew until he actually physically saw her with a knife. That being said, you know, she was holding that knife in like a stabbing direction, walking towards him, like very clearly.
I think she had a knife in one hand, and it looked like maybe a
cell phone or
in
something.
the other hand.
Yeah. But I mean, it gives us our intent, our means, and our opportunity, right? So we've got all three of the things to justify lethal force. I think the primary officer probably could have deployed another option, but for the most part, like I think he did what he was meant to do, and he's probably relying on that support officer to bring a less lethal tool to the table, which is really the star of the show in this video.
And there you have the crux of your issue on this particular footage, and why this was most likely a preventable death is even going straight into it. He gave his partner a notification like, hey, I'm going lethal. You need to go less lethal because we're probably going to need the less lethal here in a second. And in my opinion, it looked like she froze up.
I don't know if she froze up. I'm not arguing the point. I'm just curious. I don't know, because one of the things I did see was, if you watch from his perspective, and I know you weren't expecting it, so it's kind of hard to. And we can go back and watch this part. Sorry, I was trying to find the timestamp. She's very relaxed standing there. You see what I mean? I don't think she froze up per se. I think it was more or less a like, what do I do right now situation. You know what I mean?
Certainly. But again, so she's already been notified by this point, hey, you know, you need to go less lethal, which she should know. That means it's time to acquire a taser or acquire OC or whatever tool that that department has authorized them and provided them to carry. And instead it looks like she's on the radio, and she's also, we know we have a knife and we have a suspect who's advancing with a knife, and she's just standing there. She's at greater risk than the primary officer right now.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily for her, the assailant with the knife kind of just looks at her and ignores her. But she doesn't really back up very much. It looks like she's not super concerned that she's about to get stabbed.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of had to stop myself from chuckling for a second there, because on her body cam footage, you can literally see the assailant turn and look as she's advancing on her partner, like, are you going to do anything? No, you're not going to do anything. Okay, I'm going to commit.
Right. Well, and this comes back to psychology and watch the hands and body language, right? In this case, we already know what the suspect's intending, but the suspect's looking at her body language to find out if she's a threat to the suspect.
Very relaxed, very
relaxed.
nonchalant.
Mm-hmm. Which gives her I have an opportunity right now, let me take it. So, one point I do want to talk on here as well. Police officers a lot of times have an advantage over security officers or security guards, right? And kind of wrapping this back into the point of why we're doing this stream in this format. Most of the time, and obviously I know this depends on the department, it depends on the size of the city, it depends on a lot of things, I know that, but most of the time, especially with things like this, you have more than one police officer showing up to a call. And you have police officers showing up after a call has been made. Something's already wrong. They know something is wrong. They show up to deal with something, right? Security guards, inversely, right? Mm-hmm. They oftentimes are around when there's nothing wrong. And then they're also around when things are wrong, and they have to determine, okay, is this a situation? Is it not a situation? But on top of that, most of the time we wind up dealing with these situations by ourselves. And for that reason, if we pretend like she's not there, right? Now we start talking about different kinds of tactics security guards have to employ. As we're armed guards, we absolutely could draw our firearms, and in this case, we definitely would be able to justify, self-defense and or lethal use of force in self-defense, right? But the concept of, well, why didn't you just tase them, right? It comes from this. It comes from having another officer standing around not doing anything. And then when it comes from a security guard perspective, it comes from I didn't feel safe because I'm by myself. I don't have the time to, oh, that didn't work. Let me put that away and take this out. Like, it takes time to do those things. And I was hoping maybe you had some insight on that.
Yeah. Well, so let's pretend that the female officer wasn't actually there in this situation. It's just the male officer, and he's responding by himself. Right here, if he had a taser in his hand instead of a firearm, and he went to deploy a taser, and pick a reason it didn't work, maybe because a dart missed, or because it caught on a belt buckle, or it just didn't get a good firm contact and the taser deployment was ineffective. If she committed to running at him with that knife there, he does not have enough time to switch to a firearm.
Mm-mm.
So it guarantees that he will receive a strike from that blade.
At least one. The other thing too, and again, I know we're guesstimating on distance right here, but we're about a parking space, almost 2 parking spaces. He's probably about halfway through the one, and then she's about halfway through the other one, but it's not a parking space, it's the slashes. So it's, what do you think, maybe 18 to 20 feet or so?
I think this is a perfect example of the fisheye effect on the body camera being deceptive. That is one parking space between them. She is right on the other side of a parking space. She is well within 20 feet.
Okay.
So this is very much the danger zone.
So, and the argument I was going to make was like maybe a taser shot at that range might be difficult. But and you're right, and again, that depends too on the state and everything. Because like in Kentucky, I got to tell you, the parking spaces in Kentucky, awesome. Because you have like way more than enough.
Sure.
They're trying to accommodate for everyone's dualies,
Right, yeah.
And I feel cramped in Arizona parking spaces a lot. But anyways, if this was a longer range shot for a taser though, and we're talking on this from instructors, I'm an Axon instructor and so is Josh, that shot can be kind of difficult at range. And I know you were in Texas when we did our qualifications for instructor class. You qualified on the X2 and I qualified on the 7, right?
Correct.
And even at, what is it, 10 yard or 10 feet?
I think it was 10 feet. I don't think it was 10 yards.
I think it was 10 feet because 10 yards would be, too far. So, 10 feet. 10 feet, you were struggling to put darts on target with that X2. And that's not a dig at you and your capability. Mm-hmm. You're a fantastic shooter, and the taser translates very well to shooters. but they're not as accurate as social media or pop culture would lead you to believe.
There's certainly a lot of margin of error there. I mean, so on the X2s and on newer models, you've got both a top and a bottom laser that gives you an idea of where that dart's going to be, but that doesn't necessarily mean it lines up perfectly with where that laser is on the target. And depending on the department or on the company and what the policies are, you might be shooting that taser with your offhand.
Yeah.
So you might be at a disadvantage compared to if you were holding a firearm in your hand.
Absolutely. And to be clear, Valkyrie does, our company does mandate that we use our left hands for tasers, or at least we draw and we typically shoot left-handed on tasers, even for a right-hand handgun shooter. And we switch that, left-handed handgun shooters tase with their right hands. And the reason for that is to prevent mixing tools up in the heat of the moment. You go taser, 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 and then all of a sudden it's a Glock 19 going bang, right? So we have pros and cons to doing it that way, and one of those cons is absolutely a possibility of missing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let this play through again one more time just while we watch this, and let me see if you notice anything else. All right, so Josh and I are talking a little bit behind the scenes while we're observing that one. Let me back that up just a tiny bit because I think what we're talking about is valid and important to the conversation. Oh, too far. Sorry, guys. Boom. Okay. So right here, we're gonna see that look that Josh was talking about a minute ago. This is the suspect confirming whether or not our viewpoint, this female officer's view, playback speed. That's what I was looking for. We're gonna see her kind of like mentally process whether or not this officer is even paying attention or doing anything.
Yeah, so again, this is the female officer's perspective. She's looking at her right now, like, "Hey, are you going to do anything?" No? Okay, I'm gonna continue to come after your buddy.
And I had to watch this a couple of times the other day. Um, I think I was mistaken yesterday. Yesterday I said that she never even turned that taser on. Like she never even got the opportunity to even line up a shot or pull the trigger or anything. And I see the lasers on the side of that caliber, and I think maybe she did turn it on just way too late. But it looks like she draws with her left hand, transitions to her right hand, puts it back in her left hand, and then see, she drew left-handed.
Yeah, so she definitely swapped hands.
And then I see the laser right there. Yeah, so she did turn it on, but it was after she had already the suspect had already been shot several times.
Yeah.
Remind me if I think there was two drawing methods that we practiced in the instructor class. I only remembered two, and I only mentioned two during the stream yesterday. But if I'm missing one, let me know. But I'm pretty sure Axon doesn't instruct anybody to draw, transition, fumble, transition, fumble.
I don't recall ever being instructed on that technique, no.
Yeah, so this must be some new crazy, secret squirrel technique because that's just not even close to Axon's doctrine on how to deploy a taser. I mean, typically you're coming out and with the same hand you drew with, you're just swiping up on that safety. And I know that the alternate for that, like if you got stubby thumbs like I do, or if you the Taser 7 is just kind of difficult to activate like that, they were teaching like a reach over and swipe those switches up with your other hand. but that taser stays in that hand unless you have a very specific reason to transition to your other hand. It stays in the hand that it came out in, and you can deploy that taser with one hand. You don't need two hands. I don't understand. I was trying to like rationalize yesterday why she might have, gone through the effort of all this, and honestly, man, I can't think of anything other than either she didn't get trained on how to use the taser, or her instructor didn't care enough to make sure she was doing her job right.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree that it appears as if it's a massive training issue on the deployment of that taser there. And again, I really just think that she was so mentally focused on the threat that she forgot what she needed to be doing with her hands and with the placement of her position in regards to the assailant, and it just deer in the headlights.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel bad, like, even suggesting that maybe the instructor wasn't a good instructor, because if they were a good instructor and like something just fell through the cracks, like it happens. But I also can't help but remember and notice and realize just how many not good instructors there are out there. I mean, look at DPS training, for example. I talked about this yesterday. We are both aware of several instructors who you pay them a couple of bucks and they just sign off on your paperwork and don't even do training. And that's horrible considering how bad the training is to begin with.
Yeah, there's a huge issue in the DPS security guard training world of pencil whipping, as a good friend of ours refers to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, maybe her instructor was good, maybe he was bad, but part of the issue that we see sometimes is, as instructors, we only get a limited amount of time with these students.
This is true.
And really, to become proficient with the use of any tool, you're not going to develop that proficiency in the course of one class. I'm sorry, it just doesn't happen. It requires you on your own time to practice with those tools in a dry format. And maybe she did, maybe she didn't, but that video there seems to indicate to me that she was not as proficient with that tool as she needed to be.
I'm really glad you picked that segue, because that was what I was going to start pushing us towards next, was talking about the individual officer's responsibility for training. And this is true law enforcement, military, fucking security guard, all across the board. If you're not training, you're doing yourself a disservice. You're carrying a gun in a professional capacity. You're carrying a taser in a professional capacity. You're carrying a whatever. Pick a profession that has to do with like tools. Like I would be not willing to hire an electrician if they were unskilled with a pair of pliers and wire strippers. I'd be, hey, how do you use these wire strippers? Oh, you're wiring my house? Oh, heck no! I'm gonna go hire somebody else. Like pick something a skill to work on and start working on that skill.
Yeah,
especially if it's a new skill.
Yep, and for law enforcement and for private security, the firearm, the taser, the baton, the OC spray, those are the tools of our trade and our hands.
Yep.
You need to know how to use all of those tools.
And your voice.
Yeah.
Your voice is your most used tool. And I know that police activity and like Code Blue Cam, like there's all this footage of like shootings and stabbings and car chases and all this other stuff. But 90% of law enforcement and 90% of security is talking to people and dealing with people. It's not car chases and dramatic boss music and gunfights and stuff like that.
It makes your job so much easier if you know how to talk people down from the ledge, if you know how to get people to calm down instead of to get more agitated, and if you know how to get somebody who doesn't want to cooperate with you and convince them to do so anyways, just with your voice.
Yeah.
Such a useful skill.
Very useful. So, all right. Well, I think that kind of wraps it up for that video. Josh, what do you think? Do we have time for a 1 minute short that takes place in Arizona with a company that we know?
Sure.
Okay. Oh, right. This one is interesting to say the least. So this video takes place at what appears to be a QT.
Fine establishment
in Phoenix, Arizona. QTs are great, just not in Phoenix. Okay, so what we have here, I realize the uniform may look like a law enforcement uniform depending on what part of the country you're from or depending on what county you live in. And even it looks similar to some of the sheriff departments out in Arizona. I want to be clear, this is not a sheriff's deputy. This is not a, I apologize for the camera right there, it's making noises. This is not a sheriff's deputy. This is not a police officer. This is a private security armed guard. This is an example of what Valkyrie doesn't do, and an example of again bad training or lack of training. I don't want to personally blame this officer for making any decisions or anything. I do, however, want to point out the fact that something needs to be done about the training quality in Arizona, whether that is an individual business. So, Mr. Business Owner of random security company that you just happen to be watching this video, if you are in any kind of way, shape, or form able to make decisions about training for your company, make better decisions, right? And we're actively also working on our training, trying to re-energize it and make it better and more. Anyways, let's watch the video. I kind of just want to see what your reaction to this is.
We bought a gun. Yeah. There's a gun on the ground. Oh shit. Right here.
All right, I'm gonna let that play in the background so we can like reference it as it plays. Also, Zabatop47, thanks for the video, and you're getting a bunch of free views right now because we're gonna watch this over and over again. So thank you. First thoughts.
Well, it certainly looks like our guard is justified to be drawing down on this gentleman, as it looks like he probably produced a pistol on the guard. But my question is, so we have a most likely a deadly weapon on the floor there. Why are we not maintaining custody over that deadly weapon?
Right.
We might have somebody who is maybe a friend of this gentleman or not, or just doesn't like armed security guards, and maybe they just pick up that pistol behind you and walk up behind you with it and shoot you.
Or let's go back to that first video we watched today, the undercover cop that got ambushed. It's entirely possible that bad guy didn't know that guy was a cop, right? And in this case, a bystander may think that this guy is a cop and decide, hey, you know what? I don't like cops, and there's a free gun on the floor right here, right? You mentioned the guy is probably justified in drawing down on him, and I do want to be careful saying that and saying not or what, because we don't have the full context, right? This is a YouTube short. We have about a minute of footage to talk about. There's not a whole lot of
for clarification. We didn't see what led up to this scenario, so who knows? This may be justified. This may not be justified. That's not the point of our response here. But assuming it was, this guard should certainly not be continuing to step further and further away from this firearm that's on the ground, because he's creating a risk to himself and to everyone around him by doing so.
Right. I'm not sure what this guard's trying to accomplish, and part of that's because I can't hear what he's saying. So that kind of brings me to training witnesses, first of all, but second of all, I mean, why are we still pointing the gun at the guy? That's what I don't understand. Do you mind handing me that gray gun real fast, actually? YouTube, this is a gray gun. This is a training pistol. It does not shoot. It does not articulate. It does not take magazines or bullets. I'm just using it for demonstration purposes, right?
It's just a hunk of plastic.
It's a piece of plastic. I mean, it literally has like paint markers and stuff on it. If someone produces a firearm, we draw down on them. Hey, drop the gun, drop the gun. They drop that gun. Yeah, we were justified up until this point, but at what point do we collapse back to that they stay away from that gun, they start coming towards the gun, stop moving towards the gun. But that guy is backing off with his hands up, I don't know that that would be necessarily a good thing to continue following this dude through the property with this gun trained on him. We've got no backdrop. This backdrop is active traffic. We've got no control over that firearm. We've got no, and he may have backup on the way. We don't know because we can't hear what he's saying. I wonder about, what your thoughts are. It's like, is he still justified to continue? Hey man, keep backing up, keep those hands up, keep backing up. I mean,
Okay,
are we
so
detaining him? Like, what's the plan here?
I'm certainly no criminal defense attorney, but
No, neither am I.
in my opinion, and take that for what it's worth, if this guy was just a deadly threat, I would feel relatively comfortable to continue keeping my muzzle in his direction if he was just a deadly threat. But I would be more concerned about who I may be muzzling in the background. So I think that's a personal judgment call in the moment. But if we already were able to justify muzzling a dude with a loaded firearm just a moment ago, I think it's pretty easy to continue to justify doing so. The next step in escalation would be actually shooting.
Right.
Um, but yeah, you brought up a very valid point, which is, what is our backstop? Well, we don't have one. There's a busy road right on the other side. There's more buildings. There's more people walking around the street. There's a dude walking around in the background behind our assumed assailant. Um, I think at this point, if I was to coach our security guard, I would definitely caution, like, okay, at this point that we're looking at right now, it's time to start backing up, making distance, making sure nobody else even just says, "Hey, look, free gun. Let me go walk off with my free gun." Um, this guy is clearly attempting to surrender right now, at least in the moment. Let's let him walk off. We've got a description. He's on camera. We can give that to the police when they get there. Unless you're intending on effecting an arrest on this gentleman, let him leave.
Mm-hmm. So we talked about this yesterday, YouTube. We talked about the 3 P's for a security guard, right? People, property, process. At this point, I'm gonna assume, which is a dangerous thing to do, but just for the sake of argument and for talking about this video, I'm going to assume that that weapon was probably the only firearm this guy was carrying. He may have a knife, he may have needles or something else dangerous on him, but in general, I don't often see people carrying around multiple pistols. And he's got his hands up, and I don't really see any kind of impressioning on his shirt. I don't really see anything else on him. So I'm gonna assume that my people are safe. And now at this point, that gun being pointed is the only one that's actively potentially endangering somebody. And again, blue plastic gun, not real. Thank you. Uh, Property. This guy's not actively damaging the property or the premises, so that's taken care of. And then process of business. The process of business is being affected, and it's going to continue being affected until the situation is resolved. I'm going to be honest, like if I were to coach, I would probably say this brick wall right here next to the trash can looks like mighty fine cover to me. And it puts us in a position where we can control custody over that firearm. And if that guy does produce another handgun or another tool, I've got cover now. And so behind that cover, I might be more apt to retreat back into a compressed ready. Hey, stay over there, just leave the property, go away, whatever, right? Because I don't. At the end of the day, if this guy leaves my property, I win, right? That's my goal, is to get him away from the people I'm protecting, right? Um, I don't know what the mindset of the security guard in this video was. I don't know if he was trying to effect that arrest, because if he was, okay, I understand pursuing the guy, but he's actively moving away to leave the property. That is your ultimate goal, is to get them off the property and away from the people that you're trying to keep safe. So I just don't understand why he would be wanting to effect that arrest at this point. As you said, he's on camera. We've got a description. We've got a weapon that we can turn over to PD. PD may be able to pull prints off that. They may be able to trace the serial number. There's a couple of different avenues for this guy to get caught at this point. I'm not understanding what the thought process was.
Well, honestly, my personal opinion is that he's just laser focused on the threat.
That's true too.
This dude was just a deadly threat, and all he knows is, hey, I've got some measure of control over the perp right now, and I want to retain that control over the perp. So he's backing up. I'm continuing to advance to make sure that he can't dip around the corner and pull a fast one on me. I'm not saying it's the correct decision in this moment, but I think that he feels like he has some measure of control, and he's still got a potential threat right in front of him, and he's trying to keep eyes on that threat. I think that's what's happening.
And in Arizona law puts a lot of faith into that in the moment feeling behind the guard's actions, and the officer, whether it's police officer or security guard or whatever, self-defender, if you're a private citizen just doing self-defense, right? Security puts I'm not sorry, not security. Arizona law puts into a lot of faith the feeling that you were experiencing at that time, right? If I was in fear for my life, I was in fear for my life. That's how I felt, and that's how that's gonna be, right? So I would imagine this probably didn't turn into a whole lot of criminal stuff, but I can't help but wonder if there wasn't better training available, or maybe a better way of handling the situation.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be honest, some of this stuff is exposure too.
This is true.
There's especially for security companies, but certainly for certain police departments too. There's only so much training you can feasibly provide those uniformed guards or officers with before they have to end up on the street.
Yeah.
But who knows? Maybe this was this gentleman's first, violent encounter, and even if he had good training, maybe he's just, to a certain extent, forgotten part of what he was taught, and he's just worried about the threat right now.
This is also true. Yeah. I think biggest takeaways from this is that YouTube shorts or short videos like this are horrible for doing tactical analysis or breakdowns or anything like that, because it gives us like next to no information. So biggest takeaway as a viewer that I would say for y'all to you guys are scrolling through YouTube shorts and you guys are seeing stuff like this. If you guys don't have all the context, just realize it's difficult to figure out, was this actually bad? Was this actually wrong? I do personally, I think that there were better actions that could have been made in this video, this last short that we just watched. But I see your point, and I do agree with that too. And I'm more than familiar with the fact that training is expensive and it takes time, and not every business is willing to provide that training, just because of the cost associated with it and the time investment too. So with that being said, I think we had a couple of examples today of good training with the first video with the Houston officer. We had some examples of some less than good training with the taser of the Morris police officer. And I think this last YouTube short kind of gave us like a good in between where like maybe the thought process was right, maybe it was wrong, but we don't have enough context to really give a solid hey, this is what we think, would you agree or disagree?
Correct. Yeah. All of the conclusions we came to are soft conclusions based on the shallow amount of information that we have.
Yes.
Especially on the last two here, because there's just so much that we don't know from these short videos. How much information did the officers come into the situation ahead of time, so on and so forth. But yeah, you're correct.
Absolutely. And on that note too, go get training. I mean, like at the end of the day, if you're in a protector mindset, whether it's for your family and your home, you could be driving a Ferrari doing an office job, but you can still carry because you're worried about your family and your safety, then that's great. Train with that firearm, train with the tactics, do the what if games.
Take that responsibility seriously enough and get some training. Absolutely.
So if you guys have any other videos you'd like us to react to, let us know. Drop it in the comments and we'll check them out. If you guys agreed or disagreed with any of the things that we said today, feel free to leave those in the comments as well. If you like the video, like and subscribe. More to come. If you don't like the video, that's fine too. Leave a dislike, but please make a comment. Let me know what it is you didn't like so that I can make those changes in the future and try to produce better content for you guys. Final thoughts?
Get training.
That's really it. That was my final thoughts for yesterday too. It's like just train. Yeah, no. If you need training, where can we go for that?
Well, you could certainly approach Valkyrie Academy, and we have currently right now we have some training curriculum that would certainly help you get started in this realm if you're not already to that point, and we have new curriculum that's about to come out over this coming year in 2024.
Absolutely. I've got a lot of excitement for 2024. So beyond that, we're not sponsored by anybody else. I'm familiar with some good training academies and stuff. Extreme Defense USA is also a good option for whether it's just self-defense or guard work. It is a little bit more pricey, but you're getting what you pay for. Gun sight, Bear Solutions. There's plenty of good places to go train. So do that. And barring that, if you just don't have the money to do it, that's fine. Just do some dry fire. Practice those reloads, practice your medical skills. There are training aids that you can get on Amazon. Like there's plenty of ways to train. So with that being said, I hope everyone has a fantastic holiday. You guys stay safe and have a good night. Oh, wrong one. See, I'm not a good streamer yet.